So I was holding off on the long range meta because I knew they'd make some more changes, and they ended up nerfing the Cronen Squall as well as the RPK, which was a pretty solid option, but not a ton of people were using because it is an LMG, which tends to be a little bit slower. So we already broke this down on stream when we tested these numbers live, and essentially what they did with the Cronen Squall is they made it a little bit worse up close. So it's less versatile and you have to rely a little bit more on your close range option, whether it's the Vel or the Lockman sub or ISO or whatever you're going to be using. So they generally nerfed it there. Up until about 31 meters, we got a little bit of another drop off all the way up to 45. It went from 28 down to 27, which you think, oh, 1 HP, not a big deal, but it generally converts it from 11 shots to kill sometimes to basically never unless you get headshots in the mix. And then at range, they basically did not touch it. So if this is your long range beam, you never challenge anyone at 45 meters or under, you're probably going to still like the Cronen Squall. If you diversify with your weapon and you generally use the rifle at about 40, 35 meters, which is a lot of times, you will notice this impacted slightly where it may be worth exploring other options. RPK, we had a similar issue where they went ahead and nerfed basically everything on this except for the headshot. They made it a little bit higher, which essentially changes the TTK at range to 1100 versus the 1000 that you would typically get. So now you need to get a headshot or 2 headshots in the mix to get the 1000 TTK that you were before. So just to factor that in there and keeping in mind that all these damage values applied to pretty much all Warzone. So even though they typoed in there, wanted to clarify that. And we already went ahead and updated our master spreadsheet with this information to reflect that. You can see a lot of weapons were changed over this previous season or mid-season. So you got to go ahead and factor that in, look at, and you can kind of see what there is for long range as well as close range. So on here, you kind of see what performs better is worse. And this is assuming 100% accuracy. I know True Game Data just put out a new tool where you can factor in your actual accuracy into these numbers if you want to take a little bit of extra time figuring out which weapons are going to work best for you. But you can see right here today, we're going to be covering the TAC V in semi-automatic, Kastov 762, which has been one of my favorite guns since the beginning. Even though they've nerfed it a couple times, it's kind of found its niche after the update because it has a fast reload. The Socken, an LMG, so sometimes people don't really like it, but good fire rate, 100 round drum mag or whatever you want to call it, so it's pretty crazy. Cronen, if you use it more medium to long range, you won't really notice that nerf, so it's still going to be in the meta conversation. M13B, it is a reliable gun. I don't like it particularly. I wish it had an 80 round mag, and then maybe it would be my go-to as a fast firing gun. And if you like the M13, you probably like the Razorback. That's another good option, or the FR Advancer. So even though those are probably in line with the M13, they're probably not going to be included in this list today. And then we got the TAC 56, which is kind of a little bit of a sleeper. It's just because it is a laser beam, absolutely no recoil. You should be able to control this one at various ranges. So again, even if its theoretical TTK isn't the fastest, then you got the Rap H, which is an LMG again, which we've talked about, just has a slow reload. So now let's get into the class setup. So you can kind of see how the attachments lay out there. This is in particular for the TAC V, which does have a decent amount of recoil. If you're trying to control this thing, it does have a little bit of kick, but the main thing with this isn't necessarily to use the regular full auto, it's to use the semi-auto, which can be a little bit trickier to maintain target, especially in the firing range for a controller player, because there is no aim assist in here. They haven't fixed it after a season and a half. And I know you can add armor plates, but it doesn't really matter because in the firing range, the TTK is not accurate because the damage values are for multiplayer, even though the health is 150 on the dummy. I know it's a little bit confusing, but it is what it is. So that is that particular build. You can definitely still have fun with that one, but that one's more of like a little niche if you like semi-automatic weapons. Over here, we got the TAC 56, which like I said, is a laser beam. So we're going to have this set up here, and this one is in full auto. So you would use this one. It's not going to move too much, and you can kind of see it shoots pretty straight, even without the aim assist affecting in the firing range. Low recoil option. If you're a little bit more one of the players that tends to struggle with recoil, I would say this is a good option over maybe the M13, because if you're not on target first shot, then you tend to lose a lot of bullets because the fire rate is so high on that gun over this. So definitely worth trying if you do tend to struggle with recoil. And then we have the Rap H here, which we're using a little bit of a different underbarrel. This is one specific to this weapon, which we really haven't recommended before, but it does tend to help. Even though this weapon is incredibly slow, it's not going to move very much. You kind of just hit your shots, but you got to deal with this reload time. So fast hands is a necessity and a must on this weapon. So try it out, fast fire rate, but it's an LMG. So you kind of got to worry about that. And no aim assist in the firing range. That gets us into our top viable or semi-meta weapons. I think the M13 is kind of in the conversation now. Again, I don't like the mag size and how fast you can bleed through bullets, but people are loving this weapon, especially for maps like Vondel, where it's a little bit easier to get that first shot accuracy. You do got to make up for the lower bullet velocity, so you kind of got to set up the build that way. So we're using high velocity over an underbarrel and something for the recoil. So if you weren't going to go ahead, if you wanted the underbarrel, you could always swap out the Komodo for, like, you can help out. You can put on a suppressor that's going to help out with recoil and bullet velocity, and then drop the high velocity. But even then, that makes it a little bit tricky on the bullet velocity side. So pretty straightforward. It doesn't move a ton. Like I said, though, if you're not on target initially, you're going to bleed through ammo. And these are targets that don't even have plates, so you can kind of see how that particular works, and you're able to beam them from there. Again, damage per mag is kind of one of those things, but it does perform very well overall if you know what you're doing with it. And then we got the Socken, which straightforward build. With LMGs, we tend to not have to use a magazine, especially with this one being 100 rounds. We can go in for high velocity, so this thing will feel like it's actually hitting your target pretty accurately. You can see it's not like an insane fast fire rate, but it really doesn't move. And if you need to challenge targets, you can just and take them out and have to deal with an LMG reload. So fast hands, again, a must on this one if you want to go ahead and have a little bit of fun with a 100 round mag. That's going to bring us to the top two options right now, which, like I already alluded to, the Cronen is still high in the conversation, primarily because it didn't really get nerfed in the way. So it really depends. If you used it mainly at the 30-meter range, you're going to want to probably switch to something else. Searching for that, it's probably within the weapons we talked about. But overall, pretty similar build that we've had for quite a while. You just build that out, and then you're kind of good to go. Not a ton of recoil, pretty easy to use, and you can kind of target swap there. And then reload isn't crazy fast or crazy slow. It's just kind of one of those ones. Super easy to use straight, and you're good to go. Pretty straightforward. And then, which I think is the all-around like niche gun, probably for trios. If you go to quads, it gets a little bit tricky with the 40-round mag, but the great part about this gun is the fast reload. So if you guys didn't know one of these things, I know that it's kind of more common knowledge, but as we've known from doing this for a while, there's no such thing as common knowledge, no matter how common the information is. So if you reload, when you have one bullet or more, you get a faster reload because there's not excessive animation to rebolt, you know, the chamber or whatever. But if you go all the way to 40 bullets empty, you're going to get a little bit of a slower animation because it has to do an extra thing. So try to reload before you go all the way to 0, and it'll help out this gun even further instead of going all the way to 0. So pretty straightforward build and pretty easy to control. And like I said, there's probably a bunch of other weapons that are sleepers that are still viable because we're kind of in a good meta. Let me know your thoughts. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.